There's a quiet kind of person who doesn't fight to be heard because they already see what the noise is hiding. They listen more than they speak. They watch more than they act. To most people, that silence looks like weakness, but to them, it's control. While the world chases attention, they study intention. While others demand to be seen, they choose what to reveal. And in doing so, they hold a power that the loud will never understand. These are the deep thinkers. And in a world obsessed with noise, their silence is rebellion. But here's what most people don't realize. Deep thinkers aren't just quiet observers. They are strategists, analysts, pattern recognizers. They see the game being played while others are still learning the rules. They don't speak because they're afraid. They speak when it matters. And when they do, every word carries weight. This is not about intelligence. This is about depth. And depth, as you'll soon understand, is both a gift and a weapon. Chapter 1. The nature of depth. Let's start with what makes them different. Deep thinkers don't blend into the noisy world because they operate on a different frequency. While most people skim the surface of life, deep thinkers dive beneath it. They notice what others dismiss. The shift in someone's tone, the inconsistency in a story, the motive hidden behind a smile. They see light differently, time differently, meaning differently. But here's the key distinction. They're not necessarily smarter than everyone else. They simply feel more. They process more. They connect dots that most people don't even know exist. For a deep thinker, thinking isn't an activity, it's breathing. It's constant, involuntary, essential. And this creates a paradox that defines their entire existence. Depth feels like both a gift and a burden. On one hand, they experience life with a richness that shallow minds can't fathom. On the other, they carry a weight that most people will never have to bear. They don't just see a tree bending in the wind. They see how it reaches toward light, how it adapts to survive, how nature itself is a silent negotiation between strength and surrender. Everything becomes a metaphor. Everything holds meaning. And once you start seeing the world this way, you can never unsee it. This is where their power begins and where their isolation starts. Deep thinkers exist in a state of constant observation. They're watching the chessboard while others are still celebrating their last move. They're reading the room while others are trying to dominate it. They're silent not because they have nothing to say, but because they're gathering intelligence. And intelligence, in its truest form, is patience, weaponized. Chapter 2. Inside the deep mind. Let's go deeper. What's actually happening inside the brain of a deep thinker? Neuroscience gives us an answer: the default mode network. This is the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on the outside world, when you're daydreaming, reflecting, imagining. For most people, this network turns on occasionally. For deep thinkers, it never really turns off. Their minds are constantly running simulations, analyzing past conversations, predicting future outcomes, building mental models of how people think, why they act, what they want. And here's what makes them dangerous in the Machiavellian sense. They don't just think logically, they feel thoughts. The connection between their emotional brain, the limbic system, and their reasoning brain, the prefrontal cortex, is unusually strong. This means they can read emotions like a language. They can sense fear masquerading as anger. They can detect insecurity hiding behind arrogance. They don't just understand people, they see through them. Think about what this means in terms of power dynamics. While others react emotionally, deep thinkers observe. While others reveal their hand too quickly, deep thinkers wait. They gather information. They build leverage. And when they finally move, they move with precision. This is not manipulation for its own sake. This is strategic awareness. And in a world where most people are blind to their own motivations, the person who sees clearly holds all the cards. Deep thinkers are cartographers of the human psyche. They map territories that others don't even know exist. They understand that behavior is rarely about what it appears to be about. The aggressive colleague isn't angry, they're terrified of being exposed. The overly friendly acquaintance isn't kind, they're collecting allies for future battles. Every interaction is data. Every conversation is reconnaissance. Every silence is information. This constant processing isn't exhausting because they choose it, it's exhausting because they can't turn it off. Their brain is a machine that never stops analyzing, never stops connecting, never stops seeing patterns in the chaos. Deep thinkers don't just think, they architect reality through thought. Chapter 3. The Gift and the Curse. But let's be honest about the price. Depth is a double-edged sword. On one side, you have extraordinary gifts, creativity that borders on visionary, empathy that cuts through pretense, imagination that builds worlds others can't conceive. Deep thinkers are the artists, the writers, the innovators. They're the ones who see possibilities where others see dead ends. They're the chess players thinking 10 moves ahead, while everyone else is still celebrating their last capture. But on the other side, you have the burden, crushing loneliness, constant misunderstanding, and the exhausting weight of overthinking. Here's a critical distinction that most people miss. Overthinking is anxiety. Deep thinking is awareness. Overthinking is when your mind loops on the same worry without reaching clarity. It's mental quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink. Deep thinking is different. It's diving for pearls while others swim in the shallows. It's the willingness to descend into complexity, to sit with uncertainty, to explore ideas that have no easy answers. The problem is that society can't tell the difference. Both look like hesitation. Both look like someone who thinks too much. But one is paralysis, and the other is preparation. Deep thinkers engage in what psychologists call meta-cognition. They think about their own thinking. They observe their thoughts like a scientist observes an experiment. This gives them incredible self-awareness, but it also creates distance from their own emotions. They can analyze a feeling so thoroughly that they forget to simply feel it. And this is where the curse deepens. They become strangers to spontaneity. They second-guess their impulses. They question their instincts until instinct itself becomes muted. The gift of seeing everything clearly comes with the curse of never being able to unsee it. They notice the waiter's exhaustion behind the forced smile. They see the cracks in their friend's happy marriage. They sense the desperation in someone's need to be liked. And they carry all of this awareness like stones in their pockets, invisible to everyone else, but heavy nonetheless. Chapter 4. The Paradox of Understanding. Here's the paradox that defines the deep thinker's existence. The more you understand, the harder it becomes to live simply. When you can see through things, it's hard to stay blind. They see the contradictions everywhere. The person who preaches authenticity but curates every moment for approval. The leader who speaks of empowerment but craves control. The friend who offers support but secretly enjoys your struggles. This isn't cynicism. This is pattern recognition. And once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. Life becomes a series of performances, and you're the only one watching from backstage. This creates a profound sense of disconnection. Not because deep thinkers think they're better than everyone else, but because they see the illusions that others are still living in. And here's the brutal truth. Society rewards speed, not reflection. Speed looks like success. Reflection looks like hesitation. Action looks like strength. Contemplation looks like weakness. Confidence looks like certainty. Depth looks like doubt. So deep thinkers learn to adapt. They learn to code switch. They put on the mask of lightness even when they're drowning in depth. They laugh at jokes they've analyzed to death. They engage in small talk while their minds are miles away. They pretend to fit in because the alternative, being truly seen, is too exhausting to explain. This is the loneliness that no one talks about. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being surrounded by people who will never understand the world the way you see it. They watch people chase things that don't matter and can't say anything without sounding condescending. They see relationships built on comfortable lies and can't participate without feeling complicit. They observe the machinery of social performance and can't engage without feeling like a fraud. The world asks them to choose. Be authentic and be alone, or perform and be accepted. Most choose performance. They smile and nod. They play the game, but inside, they're watching themselves play the game, and the self-awareness creates a distance that never quite closes. Chapter 5. The Struggle for Connection. And this brings us to connection, or rather, the lack of it. Deep thinkers don't do small talk, not because they're arrogant, but because it feels like starvation when they're hungry for meaning. They don't want to talk about the weather. They want to talk about what the weather makes you feel. They don't want to discuss what you do for work. They want to understand why you chose it, what it costs you, what it reveals about who you are. They don't talk to win conversations. They talk to connect souls. And when they find someone who speaks their language, someone who doesn't flinch at depth, who doesn't rush to fill silence, who can hold space for complexity. They don't just open up. They open completely. This is their vulnerability. They don't do halfway hearts. When a deep thinker loves, they love with an intensity that can be overwhelming. When they trust with a totality that makes betrayal devastating. When they care so deeply that your pain becomes their pain. For them, emotions don't just happen, they reverberate, they echo, they leave marks. Studies show that people with high depth of processing experience emotions with greater intensity than average. What feels like mild disappointment to most people feels like grief to them. What feels like simple joy to others feels like euphoria to them. They live life in high definition, while most people are watching in standard resolution. This is beautiful. This is exhausting. This is why they need solitude like others need air. Not because they hate people, but because people are loud. And after absorbing everyone else's emotions, conflicts, and chaos, they need silence to remember who they are. Solitude for a deep thinker isn't antisocial behavior, it's survival. It's the space where they separate their thoughts from the noise, their feelings from everyone else's projections, their identity from the roles they're expected to play. In silence, they find themselves again. In silence, they process the world. In silence, they recharge the emotional batteries that social interaction drains. Chapter 6. The Mirror of Emotion. Let's talk about memory because deep thinkers remember differently. They don't just remember events, they remember the feeling of the light that day, the weight of the silence, the subtext beneath the words, the things that were never said. This is called depth processing in cognitive psychology. While most people encode memories based on facts and sequences, deep thinkers encode them with emotion and symbolism. They remember how your voice changed when you lied, how your smile didn't reach your eyes, how you looked away for just half a second too long. They are human lie detectors, not because they're suspicious, but because they're paying attention to the frequencies most people ignore. Micro-expressions, tonal shifts, body language, contradictions. They read people the way musicians read sheet music, not just seeing the notes, but hearing the melody, feeling the rhythm, understanding the emotion behind every measure. This makes them dangerously perceptive in any social or professional setting. They know who's an ally before you declare it. They sense betrayal before it manifests. They feel power shifts before anyone else notices the room has changed. In negotiations, they're formidable because they read what you're not saying. In relationships, they're intense because they remember everything that mattered and everything that should have mattered but didn't. But here's the cost. They absorb pain like a sponge absorbs water. They feel your grief, your rage, your fear, and they carry it long after you've moved on. This is why deep thinkers need what others might see as excessive alone time. They're not antisocial, they're detoxing. They're separating their emotions from everyone else's. They're finding themselves again beneath the weight of what they've absorbed. Solitude isn't loneliness for them, it's restoration. They need space, the way plants need sunlight, not as a luxury, but as a requirement for continued existence. Chapter 7. The Inner War. But even in solitude, there's no peace. Because the war isn't external, it's internal. Imagine standing in a room with 10 radios playing at once. Different stations, different volumes, all competing for your attention. That's what it feels like inside a deep thinker's mind. This is rumination, the brain's compulsion to loop through problems, searching for meaning, looking for patterns, trying to solve puzzles that may have no solution. Most people think once and move on. Deep thinkers think, rethink, meta-think, and then think about their thinking. It's mentally exhausting. And here's the tragedy. The more they analyze, the more distant they become from the rawness of life. They can know so much about emotion that they forget to feel it. They can understand love so deeply that they intellectualize it out of existence. They can analyze joy until it becomes just another chemical process in the brain. This is the final curse of depth. You can think yourself out of your own humanity. The escape, and it's a difficult one, is learning when to stop thinking and start feeling. Learning when analysis serves you and when it sabotages you. Learning that some truths are felt, not thought. Some moments demand presence, not understanding. A sunset doesn't need to be analyzed. A touch doesn't need to be decoded. A moment of peace doesn't need to be questioned. But for deep thinkers, this simplicity is the hardest thing to achieve. Their mind wants to understand the physics of the sunset, the psychology of the touch, the reason for the peace. They have to actively fight against their own nature to simply be. Chapter 8. The Evolution of Thought. But when a deep thinker masters their gift, when they channel depth instead of drowning in it, something extraordinary happens. They become bridges. They connect logic with empathy, reason with emotion, strategy with compassion. They don't judge people for their flaws because they see the wounds behind them. They don't condemn contradictions because they understand that humans are contradictions. They see that fear disguises itself as anger, that love hides behind pride, that cruelty often masks pain. This is wisdom, not the wisdom of knowing more facts, but the wisdom of understanding the human condition in all its messy, beautiful, contradictory complexity. And when deep thinkers reach this stage, they develop something unexpected, a dark sense of humor. They laugh not because life is funny, but because they see how fragile everything is, how seriously people take things that don't matter, how desperately we all cling to illusions of control. Their humor is philosophical, existential, sometimes unsettling to those who don't understand it. But it's not mockery, it's liberation. It's the laughter of someone who's seen behind the curtain and realized that everyone is improvising. They find humor in the absurdity of existence, in the contradiction between what we say and what we mean, in the elaborate performances we put on for audiences that aren't even watching. This evolved deep thinker becomes something rare, someone who sees everything but judges nothing, someone who understands the game but doesn't need to play it, someone who has power but doesn't need to prove it. They become observers not out of weakness, but out of choice. They become silent not because they're afraid, but because they've learned that silence is often the most powerful statement. Chapter 9. The Acceptance. And finally, we arrive at acceptance. Not the acceptance of defeat, but the acceptance of paradox. The acceptance that you will always think more deeply than most, that you will always feel more intensely, that you will always see what others miss, and that this is not something to fix, it's something to integrate. The final evolution of a deep thinker is this realization. Peace doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from being present without needing them. Maybe the final stage of deep thinking isn't knowing more, it's needing less. Less validation, less certainty, less control. When they stop trying to figure everything out and simply let themselves be, something shifts. They stop thinking their way through life and start experiencing it. Silence becomes clarity, stillness becomes strength, and depth, rather than drowning them, becomes the ocean they learn to float in. This is when depth transforms from burden to gift. This is when overthinking becomes insight. This is when the curse reveals itself as a blessing in disguise. They realize that their ability to see deeply isn't a flaw, it's a feature. Their capacity to feel intensely isn't weakness, it's wealth. Their need for solitude isn't antisocial, it's self-aware. And in accepting these truths, they find peace. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of no longer needing to. Chapter 10. The Benediction. If you're a deep thinker, don't apologize for your silence. Don't shrink yourself to make shallow minds comfortable. Don't dull your edges to fit into spaces that were never built for depth. The world needs minds like yours, people who can see the invisible, question the obvious, and find meaning in the mundane. People who understand that power doesn't always announce itself, that influence doesn't require volume, that true intelligence is knowing when to speak and when to observe. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to see through. And in a world built on noise, illusion, and performance, your ability to think deeply, to feel intensely, to observe silently, that is not weakness. That is mastery. So embrace the depth, own the silence, trust the process of your mind, even when it exhausts you. Because while others are chasing attention, you're building understanding. While others are reacting, you're strategizing. While others are speaking, you're learning. And when the noise finally fades, when the performance ends, and reality demands to be seen, they will look for people like you. The ones who saw it coming, the ones who understood all along. The deep thinkers, the quiet ones, the dangerous ones,